There are other Venezuelan investments in the region, and just to look at some that are reported for Cuba, over 300 cooperation projects, 58 Cuban manufacturing programs, over 12 agricultural development schemes, and an upgrade of the fertilizer manufacturing facility. I have raised the issue of the fertilizer manufacturing facility because the cost of fertilizers over the last 6 months has escalated in some cases to over 300%. And in fact, it's a major issue with our agricultural production here in Jamaica. And there are plans and discussions to address the whole fertilizer issue within the region. Also, the Venezuelans have set up a petrochemical complex in Cienfuegos, which is complementary to the refinery. Renewable energy and renewable energy efficiency projects are high on the PetroCaribe agenda, and the main drivers in this are Cuba and Jamaica. And at the recent summit held 2 weeks ago, 44 renewable energy and energy efficiency projects were identified at a cost of over $538 million. The fact is that many of the Caribbean territories do not have, they're not oil producers, and therefore renewable energy and energy efficiency projects have become a priority. We know of the Cuban light bulb intervention in Jamaica as an energy efficiency project that Cuba itself has changed out all its incandescent bulbs to combat fluorescent bulbs, and this is being done in the Central American and Caribbean area as well. The options: solar, wind, hydro, biomass, biofuels, waste to energy, and wave OTEC. Solar energy is very big on the Cuban agenda, and you will find in Cuba that most, if not all, the schools are off the grid and use photovoltaic lighting and for driving their computers and lighting and so on. Wind energy, they came to Jamaica about 3-4 years ago, saw our wind farm and decided to adopt wind technology in Cuba, and I think they have just about surpassed us, and using hybrid systems, not just wind, but combining it with solar systems. Hydropower, they have some hydropower. Biomass is very big in Cuba, especially bagasse cogeneration from the sugar factories. In terms of efficiencies, that is debatable because a lot of their sugar factories are aged, but it forms biomass from bagasse. Provides a lot of electricity for Cuba. Biofuels, they are not very big in ethanol yet, and biodiesel, but these are research areas because the focus is on food security. And waste to energy, they're just beginning that. Cuba, I must say, is very big in research. This is Jamaica's estimated wind renewable energy potential, and I won't go through this because I have about 3 minutes left. There are many benefits to using renewable energy, and the chief being our volatility or dealing with exposure to oil price volatility and to diversify our energy mix. Jamaica has a target of 10% electricity production from renewable energy by 2010 and 15% by 2020. There are challenges, the high costs, slow technology transfer, but I must say Cuba has been very forthright with their R&D, and in making they are very strong in the area of R&D in solar technology, photovoltaics. Wind, as I spoke about, I won't mention that. Just to say that a working group out of the PetroCaribe on renewable energy and energy efficiency looked at the potential for the development of renewable energy resources. They have defined new projects, and in fact 44 projects in total have been identified, and these would be in the Latin American and Central American and Caribbean area. These are some recommendations about creating various funds to support R&D and the execution of projects, both in renewable energy and in efficiencies. Also, to organize a yearly international event promoting and disseminating progress achieved in these areas. There are plans to move into actual implementation of these programs by 2010. These highlighted areas show some of the priorities, and the highlighted areas are the ones where Cuba and Jamaica will be having projects. And you will see that most of these renewable energy and energy efficiency projects are really being driven out of Cuba, with the cooperation of Venezuela, of course. So you see a lot of solar heaters, plans to do production of solar photovoltaic cells in Cuba and Jamaica, as well as solar water heaters for Jamaica. And I think I will leave you with that. Thank you very much.
I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, and I don't have very long presentation either. I have just short remarks. Let me first thank the CaPRI and the Woodrow Wilson Institute for inviting me to speak at this evening's session. I want to link my remarks to Rafael's presentation this morning, the working paper which was published by the International Monetary Fund, and he uses a hypothetical scenario under which he has calculated the impact of the freeing up of tourism between United States, or freeing up of the relationships between the United States and Cuba. What he talks, his hypothetical liberalization talks about is that first, the liberalization would increase overall arrivals to the Caribbean, driving tourism in Cuba to full capacity. And secondly, Cuba would retain non-US visitors even when preparing to receive increased US arrivals. His paper suggests that Caribbean countries have in general not lowered their dependence on US tourists, which leaves them vulnerable to this potential change. This is an issue which the Caribbean economies need to address by themselves, because this is not the topic of my discussion. The topic of my discussion is the energy situation and the impact on the energy situation and how Cuba is going to face what is to come. What happens is that right now Cuba has oil production capacity of about 50,000 barrels per day, which is of heavy crude oil, which is of 12 API gravity crude oil. It is not processed. It all goes into old power generation plants, which are, because of the use of direct crude oil without processing, which have suffered irreparable damage to their boiler. So it is being used as a boiler fuel. Cuba's demand per day is about 150,000 barrels per day. Of that, 50,000 barrels is the crude oil, and then 100,000, which is actually 92 to 100,000 barrels per day, which is imported oil, and it is all more or less coming out of Venezuela under Petrocaribe and the Caracas Accord arrangements, which are, of course, the special financial arrangements. This 100,000 barrels per day or 92,000 barrels per day consists of about 53,000 barrels per day of crude oil and about 40 to 47,000 barrels per day of petroleum, refined petroleum products. Cuba has, at this moment, about 301,000 barrels per day of refining capacity. Of course, it is all old, it is dilapidated, and currently the operational capacity is no more than 53,000 barrels per day, which actually is using the crude oil coming out of Venezuela. So there is a situation where you have the power plants, which are old. You have a situation where you have refining capacity, which is old. You are looking towards the increased tourism, which is under hypothetical case, which Rafael presented, which means that there's going to be a pressure as far as the Cuban economy is concerned for increased demand for oil. Now, how that demand can be met and where it is going to come from and what kind of investments are needed, this is an issue which we need to address.